Hi, it's Neve here and welcome to the Scrapfx YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a 12 by 12 scrapbook layout using the newest release from Scrapfx, their February release, which has got lots and lots of Valentine bits and pieces. So I'm starting off with a picture, and I'm using a picture of my daughter, which I absolutely adore, and I've cut it down into a 5 by 5 inch square, and I'm just matting it with some brown paper and then sticking it onto this pattern paper, which you can see I've used previously, so I'm not wasting anything. These are all the papers I'm using today are all from Basic Grey, so I've got a huge stash of them that I'm trying to sort of use up my stash from the past. Now, one of the reasons I really love the Basic Grey papers is because they've got these beautiful grunged up backgrounds already, but you can add to them to really personalise your own scrapbooking paper. So I'm doing that by using the new heart stencil from Scrapfx and just going over it with some Distress ink. I think this one was... I think it ended up being picked raspberry. I think I started out using spun sugar, but it was a little bit too light. So I'm just going in all over and adding the hearts and then sort of working out what I want to do. So I was really happy with the placement. I definitely wanted to have my picture in the middle. So I knew that that was going to be a focus, so I could sort of add stuff around the outside. So I'm going in with the brown Distress ink, the frayed burlap, just with a little hatch stamp. To add in some depth of colour. Now, I'm not really a pink person. I do like sort of grungy type-fied scrapbook pages, so I like to sort of dull down the colours, which is completely opposite from how I art journal. I find it really interesting that my scrapbooking style and my art journaling styles are so different. You'd think they would overlap, but they haven't quite just yet. So I'm going in with some Distress Oxides in the brown as well, which I think was walnut stone, just to add a little bit of texture with the honeycomb stamp from Scrapfx. And one of the reasons I love the foam stamps from Scrapfx is that they retain so much ink, so you can get numerous printings of them and it sort of just blends into the background. It's just really, really handy. I decided that I wanted a little bit more depth to colour in the background and just have those varying shades of reds and pinks. I wanted to add a little bit of darker red to this because the picture itself doesn't actually have any pink in it. It's more a reddy tone. And while it fitted with the page, I just wanted to bring some of that darker red into the background just to sort of tie it all together. So that's my finished background. It's a bit of a change from what it began. And then I'm just wiping down my page so I've got a clean surface to work on. Now I had this doily which I really liked, and I knew I wanted to use this new word phrase, the Instaperfect, because cutting down the picture to the 5 by 5 really reminded me of an Instagram page, and having the little hashtag as well sort of tied it all together, so hashtag adorable, which she is most of the time when she's not having a screaming fit. Now I'm just sort of auditioning everything. I find I do this a lot with scrapbooking pages. I don't want to commit to anything. I sort of stick things down, work out where I want them to go if I'm happy with them. I do tend to work in clusters or in triangles when I'm working, just to make sure that everything sort of is in the right place and that I'm happy with them. So I'm going in, I knew I wanted to emboss in gold and add some gold to my page. I'm using the picked raspberry Distress Oxide as my embossing medium because I couldn't find my Versamite pad. It's grown legs and gone walkabout. But one of the reasons I chose the pink instead of another colour that was sitting there was if there was any gaps in my embossing, that you would have that pink tone underneath to see, so it would fit in with the page. So when I do my embossing, I pour all my embossing powder into my tray and cover over my image and then heat it up. And you can see you get a fairly good image doing it that way. And I do tend to do a few, particularly when I'm working on chipboard, I do a few layers of embossing powder just to make sure you get a really even coat of what you're doing. And you can see that beautiful shine come up straight away. So in the P, just one end of the P, it didn't quite get all my embossing, so I'm just heating up that end and dipping it back into the embossing powder. So I've got my 2 title pieces. I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to use these heights or not. I end up using them in the final layout, but I figured if I embossed them anyway, I would have them for another project. Now I'm using an acrylic block to press my chipboard into my ink pad. The reason for that is because the chipboard is so fine. If I used my fingers, I could squash it or bend it or do something like that. By having the acrylic block, it just means that you can put pressure on it to get a really good coat, but you're not going to damage the chipboard in any way, which is really important. Most people would be sensible, unlike me, and actually use a larger block to press it down, but that little fine block worked just as well. I'm all about just using what's around. Now I'm working on the Tim Holtz glass mat. It is heat proof, but you can see there it does leave condensation behind, so I would suggest, I tend to work onto an MDF mat and that still leaves condensation behind, so if you're working directly onto the glass mat, it will get really, really hot. So just please be aware when you're doing that the glass gets very hot and it will keep whatever you're working on hot. So if you're working on chipboard, it's going to keep it hot for a lot longer than it would do if you're working on another surface. I had another doily sitting there and I figured that I might blend it in. I thought the white might have been a little bit too stark, so I decided to do some ink blending on it, and then I added some of this gold to it just to add a bit of a pop of colour to it to differentiate it from the background. I wasn't 100% sure if it worked, and it didn't. I really wasn't happy with it in the end. It just made everything look too much the same. So I went back to the white doily in the end, but it's always good to have a go at something different and just to see. I could have got away with that with the gold on it, but in the end I much prefer just having that splash of white there. It picked up the whites that were in the photo as well, so it just sort of balanced everything out again and gave a real focal point to the image. So you can see with the way I've placed my embellishments around my photo that I've sort of worked in a triangle, and I tend to do that a lot when I'm putting on embellishments or doing something in anything I do. Actually, I tend to work in threes or in triangles. It just gives the eye something to follow as it goes around the page. And I'm using double-sided tape to stick everything down, and now I'm using this Gina K Connect glue. It's a PVA acrylic glue, I think. However, it's an awful lot more tacky than any glues I've come across before, and it dries really quickly, and it comes in this beautiful little pen which doesn't clog, so it just ticks all the right boxes for me. So if you can get your hands on it, I would suggest doing that because it is fabulous stuff. It's perfect for gluing down this chipboard. It glues everything down straight away. So now I'm still playing around with my flowers to see if I want them on the page. It took a little while to decide if I wanted to do that or not. To be honest, I don't tend to use many bulky, apart from chipboard, I don't tend to use many bulky things on my scrapbook pages because they go into albums. This is one of the first times I've actually used flowers on a scrapbook page, so I was pushing the boundaries for myself by doing it, but I'm glad I did in the end. It sort of added to the overall effect, sort of gave it a bit of a romantic feel. I decided I did want to stick the hearts on, and to do that I wanted to overlap them. So you saw me get my craft knife out and just cut off a little bit off this top heart so that the other heart would nest into it neatly again, so you wouldn't have that bulkiness happening. If it was a more solid shape, I would have just put foam tape on it, on one or the other of them, so it propped them up a bit from the background, but because they were so fine you would have seen any attempt to try and hide that. So I decided it was easier just to cut that little bit out and to overlap them in that way. So with my flowers, I decided I wanted to put them on the left hand side, but again, a bit like covering the doily, it just got a little bit too much of the same. So I really liked having the gold on the doily, and I thought I'd do the same with the paper flowers. So I've just got this Inca Gold wax that I'm just rubbing over the surface. just to add a bit of variation in colour, give it that sort of grungy look again, and to blend it into the background. You'll notice that all these flowers also have wires on them. So just with a pair of sharp scissors, I just trim off that wire, because I could have poked holes into my page and stuck the wire through and stuck them down just to make sure they're extra glued down. But I knew I was going to be using this ultra thick gel medium, which will glue down anything. It glues down metal chimes to a page, so I knew it was going to glue down flowers onto this page. So just with a craft knife, applying some of that gel to the back and sticking them down. Now I was finished, I really liked it, but I do like to have some journaling on my page, and I couldn't work out where I wanted to put it. If I added a tag to it, it would take away. So what I decided to do was to actually journal around the outside of the doily, and I'm so glad I chose to do that because it just gave an outline to the doily. I used a very lightweight pen. I think it was a 0.5, so it was quite a narrow pen, so it's not overwhelmingly dark. It blends in with the background. It's kind of hidden. It's very hard to read unless you're actually up close to the piece itself to actually read it. The journaling for this page was basically just all about Erin at the moment and how she is always smiley. She's always happy to see you, and she's just learnt how to blow kisses. So every time you go into the room or out of the room, or if anyone leaves, we get inundated with lots of blown kisses, which I thought was adorable, hence the hashtag at the top. So that's pretty much the end of the scrapbook page. Here's a close-up of how it turned out. I was really happy with how it came together. Those new chipboard shapes were just perfect for this. Thank you so much for tuning in. The supplies and anything else for this video will be listed down below and linked to the blog post. Please check it out, and until next time, see you later.